Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my round 7 review of the weekend wrap up. I'm going to be going through every game from Saturday, all three, as well as the two games from Sunday. I'm going to be talking a little bit about where I think each game was won, as well as where it was lost for both teams, respectively. And with that being said, let's get straight into the video. To start with, I'm going to be talking about the North Melbourne versus Adelaide game on the Saturday early afternoon at Blundstone Arena. And to be blunt, to start straight off, North are shit. Is that too much of an overreaction? No. Is it fair to say? I think so. North are now 0-7 to start the season, and they have been quite poor in basically every game. They haven't really contended in any game, and in this game specifically, they weren't very good. To start with, I'm going to talk a little bit about where Adelaide got really through the game, and a lot of that was based off of Laird's dominance in the middle, had 34 touches and 13 clearances to go alongside that. So really roving O'Brien's work quite well and being able to get the ball out and into Adelaide's good users' hands. They were able to get Saligo going, which has been really, really good in the last about 4-5 weeks. So that's really good for them because he has provided that spark and that energy that they needed in this relatively lackadaisical midfield. Rankin got 5 goal contributions, including 4 of his own, so he was able to get that form up and going. Shelley was a bit better as well. I believe he kicked 2 goals, and he was a bit more classy than what he had been against Essendon last week. He was able to return to what he should be doing after a down week, which is good. It's really good signs for him to show that his confidence is back. And I think Braden Cook as well was really, really strong in the forward line. He was able to capitalise on a couple of North Melbourne mistakes and provided Adelaide a bit of a lead early on to where they could just comfortably cruise throughout the game. I also think Lockie Scholl was very good off of halfback and wing, and he's been able to provide a bit of clever ball use and a real smart mind behind the ball that have helped Adelaide increase their ball movement to a more respectable level than what I had been early on in the season. For North Melbourne, I think there's a couple positives you can take out of it. Dersma and McKercher showed a good bit of promise. Dersma having, I believe, 2 goals, or it might have been even 3, and showing real promise as a more up-the-ground forward. Was able to be that outlet kick from outside 50 in North's backline, and he was able to take a couple of really strong marks to help relieve the pressure at times. And then McKercher was able to gather 30 touches as well, playing a bit more midfield time as Simpkin has sort of moved out of that role a little bit. And then for North Melbourne trying to move the ball, they really struggled kicking inside 50, even though they put up 81 points for a relatively weak side. I think Josh Worrell and Mike Keane controlled the backline pretty well for Adelaide. They took a fair few marks. I think Worrell was probably the stronger of the two, and I think he showed some real promise as potentially that third tall, allowing Michelini to be a bit more of that one-on-one defender that he probably needs to be. I also believe Dawson had over 750 metres gained off of 27 touches, if I'm not correct. So it was a really strong game from the Adelaide captain. He felt a bit more presence in the air this week than what he had done over the year, which is good because he is a bigger body and it's probably a bit needed. Then on the Saturday afternoon, we had probably the best game of the round between Geelong and Carlton. Geelong were the eventual winners by just over 2 goals, and it was a pretty good game to watch as a neutral. It was a bit of a clash of styles in the end, whereas throughout the year it had been pretty similar styles with how the teams played, both wanting to transition the ball, slightly different ways in how they do it, but with Mark Pittonet playing and being so good, Carlton were a bit more of a contested team than what they had been throughout the start of the year. A lot of that was also Paddy Cripps. He was absolutely exceptional, back to his 2022 best, and it was probably a big reason as to why he won the 2022 Brownlow, because of the dominance of Mark Pittonet in the middle, allowing them to be a more contested team. Paddy Cripps was excellent, backed by Mark Pittonet, and that really provided Carlton with an edge in the midfield, even though Dangerfield was very good for the first 2.5 quarters. While fit, he was very good as well. He just really, really pushed his legs, which unfortunately did result in a hamstring injury that Geelong are now going to have to deal with. But outside of that, I think Carlton's inaccuracy did hurt them early, but it also hurt them late a little bit. they just weren't able to capitalise on a lot of their options. They tried to target Kerno and Mackay a bit too much. I think it was 28 inside 50s that they targeted specifically to those two. And yes, they're both highly talented key forwards, and they do get some return. But when Geelong were very much game planning to be able to send two in the air against one of them, and then able to turn the ball over, they were able to get out the back as well of Carlton a little bit too much. I think they probably needed to look down a little bit more, find the shorter option. And when they did, it worked. They were able to get a couple options. They just unfortunately missed a fair few of those shots. But I think they needed to do a bit more and a bit more, spread the load a bit more. I think would have been a better option for Carlton in the end. But for Geelong, Cameron was exceptional, kicked 5 goals. He's just a really difficult matchup at the moment. I thought they might have gone Brody Kemp. They went with a bit of Lewis Young. But it's just a difficult matchup. Do you send a small up the ground with him? Do you send a tall? But then how do you is that tall able to stay with him up the ground? If you do put a small on him, how are you going to how are you going to switch the matchup when he goes back into the forward 50? Because you don't want a small on him in the air, even though he's not the greatest target. Statistically, at least, he still is a great aerial presence. And so it's a really, really difficult matchup. Brian Myers was also exceptional. I think he had over 20 touches as well as 2 goals. So his fantastic season continues. And then outside of that, just Geelong's system has been exceptional this year. Chris Scott has been probably the coach of the year so far this season, and Geelong continue their winless, not winless, undefeated streak to start the season. Then on the Saturday night, we had a pretty good game between two very inconsistent sides over the last couple of seasons, between Fremantle and the Bulldogs. Fremantle getting the win by 4 goals in the end, and it was not a bad game to watch, I'd say. Fremantle, they were definitely more instinctual, the game, how they played it. They were a bit more free when they were moving the ball. They were able to be a bit quicker, and that really helped them with no Jai Amos up forward. They were able to get a couple of plays in space, which is really important for them because they do want to play with a bit more speed. And you do have Luke Jackson up there, and you do have players like Frederick, Emmett, a younger forward line, Simpson as well. It's able getting the speed on the ball really helps those forwards, and it was a really, really good game for them, especially to get a win now after a couple of poor losses. Players like Fife and Sarong in the midfield were absolutely exceptional. They provided the difference. And then Josh Tracy up forward, I think he's had a real breakout season. He's been exceptional. A couple of his lead-up marks on the wing were really, really important. He felt like he got his hands to almost every contest he was in. So without Amos for the next little bit, he's going to be really important to this team. And I think when Amos gets back, they might have found their potential next 3 key forwards. Bailey Banfield was also very good. And someone I think who has been quite underrated so far for Fremantle this season has been James Aish. I really rated his game on the weekend. I think he took a couple of really important marks down back for Fremantle to quell a bit of the Bulldogs game, and he has been very good for them so far this year. I think he took about 12 marks on the weekend, so he's been very, very crucial to a fair bit of their success when they have won. And then for the Bulldogs, Bailey Dale has sort of proved Beveridge wrong a little bit. He was able to get essentially 30 disposals and 2 goals on the weekend. He had 35 or 37 last week in a goal against the Saints. So his form since coming off as the sub has been very, very good and proved Beveridge wrong. But outside of that, I think they sort of struggled a little bit. Sam Darcy was good, kicked 3 goals. He was on Luke Ryan for a fair bit of the game, and Ryan tried to be a bit more free and intercept the ball a fair bit. But with Darcy, you kind of need to put a body on him, and that allowed him to get a couple of run and jumps at the ball, which allowed him to get the 3 goals. But outside of that, they're just so inconsistent, and it's really tough to predict how they're going to perform each week. To kick off the Sunday action, we then had Gold Coast versus West Coast, and it was a pretty good first 2.5 quarters of the game, really. It was pretty close for the majority of that part of the game, and West Coast weren't too bad. Their midfield was dominated quite heavily. A lot of that was based off of the dominance of Jared Witt. He had almost 50 hit-outs, kicked a goal in the first quarter, and he was absolutely excellent. I think he had over 10 clearances as well. And then he really controlled the game, allowed the players like Rowell, Anderson, Miller to really control the game as well. And off the back of that, it was a very Gold Coast dominant game. However, West Coast were able to capitalize on a lot of their opportunities that they were able to create, and a fair bit of it was off the back half. Gold Coast were a bit fumbly in the back half. They weren't at their best. Their intercept game didn't really get going, but after that, they were really, really impressive. Anderson, Miller, Rao, they put on a show, and Jake Rogers as well as probably deserved the rising star from that performance. Over 20 touches, really, really impressive display. He was high pressure, and a lot of his touches were as in the forward half. I think 21 out of his 22 or something like that. So really, really impressive performance from him in, I think, like second game or something. So really, really impressive start to his career. And then for the Eagles, Yo had a good first half, but sort of dropped off a little bit. Jake Waterman continues his excellent form, kicked 4 goals again. I think he's top 3 in the Coleman medal at the moment. And without Oscar Allen, has really showed that he could be potentially a third key forward option for the West Coast if they do ever get back. When they do get back into top 8 contention. But outside of that, I don't think there was too much going for West Coast. Liam Duggan wasn't too bad. Could have been pinged for a couple holding the balls, but don't think he was too bad. McGovern was okay. But Tim Kelly, I thought, was quite poor. I think he gave away something like 4 free kicks in the middle. He was quite poor. So I think they need a better game from him going forward. But they were without Harley Reid, so it's not too much to take away from this game. And then the last game for the round was Hawthorn versus Sydney, and it was complete dominance from Sydney right from the first bounce. Really, their ball users off of halfback all got 25 disposals essentially. Blakey, Lloyd, Goulden, and Ollie Florent, they really dominated the game. Their ball movement was perfect essentially at times and really carved Hawthorn to pieces. They had a shared load as well up forward. I think they had 12 individual goal scorers, something crazy. They were really able to just not let Hawthorn get back into the game as well. They kicked 2 goals in the first quarter. Hawthorn only kicked 1 for each of the next 3 quarters. And so it was really poor performance from them. For anything for Hawthorn to take out, I think Dylan Moore had a really good game, and also Will Day coming back is good. But Mitch Lewis was a bit of a late out, so they're still struggling without him. And also Cam McKenzie wasn't too bad. A little bit about Sam Wicks' goal celebration has caused a bit of spark on social media. Apparently, he has gone to try to get with one of the Swans' exes, but it's just a bit of a weird situation with the celebration. No one coming to him after he kicked the goal. But I don't think you need to read too much into it. Not everyone has to be great mates with each other on the team. You've got 40-something players, and it can be quite difficult. So I don't think it really matters too much. But a good win for the Swans, and Hawthorn are really ruining the injuries. But it's just a tough period for them while they don't have anyone fully fit. But that's going to be the end of this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. It will really help push my video in the YouTube algorithm. Leave your thoughts about round 7 in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel if you like this type of content. And thanks for watching.